Hello, welcome. We're going to get started because we have an aggressive agenda today. And I wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today on behalf of the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. Welcome to today's Fall Funding Roundtable. In this 120-minute webinar, experts from 6 state and federal agencies focus on the latest available water infrastructure funding and financing programs. We'll begin today with presentations from state and federal agency representatives, and we'll conclude with a facilitated discussion with your questions as time allows. But first, a little bit about the Environmental Finance Center. Our team enhances the managerial and financial capacity of regional and local governments, nonprofit organizations, and local residents to improve environmental infrastructure, services, and quality of life. Our partnership with our co-hosts for this webinar series is supported under a grant by the Rural Utilities Service housed in the United States Department of Agriculture. So for some logistics, during the webinar today, everyone will be kept on mute to ensure audio quality. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box anytime throughout the session. We will be holding all questions for a facilitated discussion at the end of the panel. We will also be posting the presentations as well as a video recording on the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center's website. You will be receiving a follow-up email that includes a link to all of these materials, including speaker contact information and a funding matrix that the Environmental Finance Center has developed for your use. My coworker Avery will also post a link to that funding matrix in the chat. Registered attendees can receive a certificate of attendance for participating in the webinar today. This webinar has not been submitted to licensing agencies for pre-approval of continuing education or training credits. If you require a certificate of attendance to apply for credit hours, please contact the email address provided or see our website at efc.syr.edu. Now, you may be hearing about the annual consolidated funding application, Open Now. The CFA allows applicants to access multiple state funding sources through one application, making the process quicker, easier, and more productive. However, plan first. It can be a multi-year process, so consider applying for a planning grant. And once ready, attend a CFA meeting to learn more about the process and meet your REDC members. This is the regionalcouncils.newyork.gov website, and click on the resource link to find a regional meeting near you. All right, and on that note, we can begin today's discussion. We have 6 state and federal agencies to present on today's webinar. We have posted contact information for all of our speakers on the SUEFC website. And we will be kicking things off with a joint presentation from Annie Balbian from the Department of Health and Liz Ricci from the Environmental Facilities Corporation. All right, and I will turn it over to you, Liz, and you can start screen sharing.
Okay, great. All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Annie Balbian, and I'm an engineer at the New York State Department of Health. I'll be going through the first half of our presentation, and then Liz Ricci from the Environmental Facilities Corporation will be taking on the second half. In today's presentation, we will be going over federal and state financing opportunities for drinking water and clean water projects. So today's agenda, we will be going over who EFC is, our state revolving fund programs, grant programs, and our newest federal funding opportunity with the bipartisan infrastructure law, also known as BILL. So let's go over who EFC is. So who is EFC? EFC is the Environmental Facilities Corporation. They provide financial assistance in low interest loans and various grant programs that we'll further get into later in this presentation. We will refer to the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Program as CWSRF and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund as DWSRF. The New York State Department of Health, myself, works closely with EFC on their drinking water programs And EFC has their own division that works on the reviews of the clean water projects. And EFC also has their own finance and legal staff that works on both programs for the clean water and drinking water programs. Since 1990, EFC has provided over $31 billion for clean water projects and over $7 billion for drinking water projects. So what are the types of financial assistance that EFC offers? The Drinking Water and Clean Water State Revolving Funds provide short-term and long-term loans with opportunities for communities to receive grants, also known as principal forgiveness. Short-term loans are like a line of credit. They can help pay for planning and construction of your projects. And you can compare the long-term loans like your mortgage, and it's up to 30 years. Interest rates vary for projects funded. They will depend on your project scoring and financial need, such as you may be eligible for hardship, which is 0% interest loan. So let's go over the state revolving fund programs. So how does the SRF program work? We get annual money from the EPA with a piece of the state matching funds up to 20%. You can see here in the image the idea of this as being a revolving fund. It's a revolving fund because we loan this money out to municipalities, and the repayments we get from the loans goes back into the program and gives it the revolving aspect. So you now know the basics of the SRF program and how EFC and DOH work together. So let's go into more details. The intended use plan, also known as the IUP. So we have two different IUPs. We have one for the clean water program and one for the drinking water program. You can see here on the slide on the right, the most recent IUPs. The drinking water IUP actually was just published this past week for the 2023 federal fiscal year, and so was the clean water IUP. The federal fiscal year for the IUPs runs from October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023. Each year, we release a new and updated IUP for the following fiscal year. So the IUP for each program describes the SRF program in the beginning half, including information on the available funds, how the funds are being used that year, and the list of eligible projects for funding. The list of eligible projects, including project costs in each IUP, are based on listing forms submitted by the applicant to EFC and DOH. We'll get more into this later when we're talking about listing forms. All you need to know right now is that the multi-year list in the IUP is for the projects that have just submitted a listing form only and are looking for funding in the future and just want to get their project listed. Where the annual list is for projects that have submitted an engineering report with their listing form, which we'll talk about later. To find the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund or Clean Water State Revolving Fund IUPs, you can just Google Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, New York State, or same for clean water. And they're the first links that popped up. I actually just checked that today. So going to listing your project. To get your project listed on the IUP for either program, you will need to submit a listing form. For the Clean Water program, you will submit a listing form using their Plus system, which is an online portal, and you will create an account for and log in. Again, you can just go and Google the CWSRF Plus system, and it pops right up in the first link in your browser. For the drinking water program, we do not use Plus system. You will find instead that you will have to fill out a listing form and then submit it to our design email. All that is provided on the listing form. This can be found on our health.newyork.gov website. Again, you can just Google this. And there's a tab that says, how do you list a project on the IUP? And you can find the PDF of the listing form, and there's other documents like the engineering report outline, guidance, and other documents. The listing form for the DWSRF program has a second page with guidance on where to send the form and more instructions to the applicant. The deadline for the most recent IUP is already passed, but the upcoming federal fiscal year of 2024 deadline will be June 16th of 2023. But you can submit your project listing form anytime during the year to start getting your project listed and start the process with us and EFC. Now, we talked about this earlier about the annual list and multi-year list. You can, if you submit just a listing form for your project, you'll be put on the multi-year list, which just gets your project listed on the IUP. And you'll be able to see where you're listed and your score, but you can't actually start the process with EFC to receive funding until you're on the annual list. So to get on our annual list, you'll need to not only submit a listing form, but you also need to submit an acceptable engineering report. Getting on our annual list will make you eligible at bare minimum for a market rate loan. We will review your listing form and the engineering report you submitted based on water quality for the clean water program and public health needs for the drinking water program. These scores are then put in descending order on the IUP, and we develop funding lines based on the scores that change annually based on available funds. These funding lines determine if your project is eligible for subsidized interest rate loans or hardship loans, which are 0%. And like I said before, these funds reflect what is needed for the federal fiscal year. So once you're on the annual list and you want to come in for funding, you will need some additional documents for the financing application. These are not needed when you apply and submit your listing form. This will be later on if you're actually looking for funding. So to start the process to receive funds, you will need certain documents such as an acceptable bond resolution, your environmental review done, SHPO letter done, district formation done if needed. But EFC will be in communication with the applicant to let them know what items are needed if you want to start moving forward to close a short-term financing on the loan. So another thing that needs to also be noted for your project is our mandatory terms and conditions, formerly known as EFC bid packets. You will need to include these in all of your contracts and agreements, your engineering agreement specifically. If you are planning on having any of your contracts paid for through EFC funding, you'll need to have these in them. So we just recommend that you put these in any of your contracts and engineering agreements, even if you haven't been funded yet but are planning to. It's best practice just to put them in to be ready. In our terms and conditions, there are programmatic requirements such as MWBE, service disabled veteran and owned business, American Iron and Steel, Davis-Bacon wage rates requirements, and A&E service procurement. And we just want to note that the A&E procurement will be needed for all clean water, SRF, and bill funding for projects after October 1st of 2022. Now I'll be handing it over to Liz Ritchie with EFC.
Great, thanks, Annie. All right, so as Annie mentioned, I am a project engineer that works specifically on the Clean Water State Revolving Fund at EFC. And I'm going to be going through our various grant programs that we offer in addition to our loan program that Annie just described. So we have several grant programs that are state funded, and we're going to briefly describe our engineering planning grant program, green innovation grant program, and then our Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, or WIA, and the Intermunicipal Water Infrastructure Grants Program, IMG. So the EPG program is a very popular program that we have, and it essentially provides grants for municipalities to write their engineering report. Years ago, we realized a lot of projects don't get started because municipalities have trouble funding the engineering report. So this program is available for Clean Water State Revolving Fund projects, so for wastewater infrastructure. And we have grants available up to $100,000 specifically for inflow and infiltration studies that are required by a consent order or some other enforcement action. And then for all other SRF eligible projects, municipalities can apply for up to $50,000 for those projects. And the intent in this program is that the reports that are developed could be used use to list your project on the CWSRF intended use plan or use for other grant programs. It's not a requirement, but the hope is we can kind of help you get your foot in the door and we can help fund the rest of your projects. So we have staff internally that work on the CPG program and are very helpful to municipalities to kind of navigate how to apply, which is through the consolidated funding application. And just of special note, since we were talking about programmatic requirements, since these are state funds, you eventually would use the state financial assistance terms and conditions to go into your engineering contract, and that more specifically focuses on a 30% MWBE goal and a 6% SDVOB goal. Currently, the CFA process is closed, but this is something, you know, if municipalities are interested, it could be a focus for next year. Our Green Innovation Grant Program, this program is also through the CFA. And this grant program focuses on water efficiency, energy efficiency, and green stormwater infrastructure projects. A very successful grant program. It historically focused on green stormwater infrastructure. We funded a number of things like bioretention practices, harvesting stormwater projects, porous pavement, and municipalities can get 75 to 90% grants for those projects. And then a couple years ago, we expanded it to include water efficiency and energy efficiency projects, which both can receive 50 to 75% grants. So water efficiency, one of the classic examples are to install new water meters in municipalities or replace old water meters and the metering system. So that's an option. Energy efficiency, that could be combined heat and power project, installing turbines to help be more energy efficient at a wastewater treatment plant. But all three categories are eligible for grants under this program. And these would use our standard SRF terms and conditions, so a 20% under the goal. So outside of the CFA program, EFC has the WIA and IMG grant programs, which are part of the Clean Water Infrastructure Act of 2017, or CWIA. So earlier this year, we had announced over $600 million for that program. Currently, we're evaluating applications that were submitted this September for an additional $225 million. So lots of grants available for this program, and the program is developed to focus on municipalities, and really anything that is clean water or drinking water eligible would be eligible to apply for both of these two programs, provided that they result in construction of a project, meaning we're not just going to fund planning, but we really want to see projects result in construction. And currently, since I mentioned we're evaluating these applications, the round is currently closed, but we would anticipate a round next year. And specifically speaking about each of these programs, WIA has two different categories for clean water and drinking water. The clean water WIA grant, municipalities can be awarded 25% of the total net eligible project cost up to a 25 million cap. And just of note, we can't use the grant to fund stormwater scope unless it's directly related to the sanitary sewer. So sewer separation projects are eligible. Anything that will help reduce flows to a CSO would be eligible, but just installing storm sewers to help with drainage, that is not eligible for the WIA grant, although eligible for SRF loan, just not WIA grants. So on the drinking water side, municipalities can get 60% of project costs up to a $5 million cap. And just of note, a municipality annually can only get $5 million in DWSRF grant, which is the federal grant that comes out of our money from EPA, or WIA grant combined in a particular year. But if you have a project that is addressing an emerging contaminant above the state determined maximum contaminant level, you may be eligible to get 60% without a cap. So obviously there's a priority to be addressing emerging contaminants. So there is no cap in terms of how much grant we will give you on those projects. For IMG, it's same eligibilities as WIA, except for here, we're really trying to incentivize joint projects with multiple municipalities. And you can get a 40% grant up to $30 million. Again, assuming these projects are typically larger, we would want one municipality to take the lead on behalf of the municipalities that are involved on the project. But we can fund different types of projects, but just the classic examples or projects that are particularly competitive. If you are proposing a regional wastewater treatment plant project, or maybe you are proposing to interconnect multiple water systems to help promote water quality and public health, those would be the examples of what we'd be looking at for this type of grant. All right. So I'm going to touch briefly for a few slides on our federal bipartisan infrastructure law money that we have bill. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, bill has been called a couple different names, including the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. But essentially, it provided $43 billion in funding over the next 5 years for SRFs nationally. So specifically in New York, we have quite a large amount of money that's available to us that we have provided, have discussed in our current IUPs that are now on our website. And this allocation is in addition to annual appropriations that we get for the SRF program. And of course, that means it's set aside for specific projects, and we'll talk specifically about how you could be eligible for bill. But if you are not already on the intended use plan and been evaluated for bill eligibility, your next deadline really would be to get yourself listed on the 2024 IUP by the June 6th deadline that Annie had mentioned previously. But of course, we have more information on our website. So this table just identifies the categories that are available for the bill money. So we have allotment set aside for both standard clean water and drinking water projects. So anything that's eligible for the SRF program in terms of scope would be eligible under it's called a general supplemental category. And then we also have emerging contaminant category, both for clean water and drinking water. So if you have a project that's addressing an emerging contaminant, you could be eligible in either of those categories, depending on the type of project you have. And then drinking water has a third category for lead service line replacements. So the far right column that talks about required additional subsidy, that's just a fancy way of saying grant. So EFC is required to give that percentage in the form of grant, but that percentage is 49%, for example, of the money we got from EPA, not specifically saying we have to give 49% to every single project, but I just wanted to clarify that. But of note, emerging contaminant, again, continues to be a high priority for the federal government as well as the state. So 100% of that will be given in the form of grant. So in order to be eligible, well, I guess I'm ahead of myself, projects that are eligible for bill funding that are already on our 2023 IUP, you could go to that IUP and on the clean water list, there's a D1 list and there is a bill funding line. So if you're eligible for hardship, meaning a 0% interest loan and are above that funding line, eventually you will receive a letter from EFC providing more details on what's coming up. And we expect additional information for the drinking water, emerging contaminant, and lead service lines in future amendments to their IUP. But generally right now, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund general pot you can get up to 50% grant up to 25 million. Emerging contaminants, it's 100% grant up to 25 million. And then for the drinking water general supplemental, it's 70% grant up to 5 million, and more details coming soon for emerging contaminants and lead lines. This is, these are the criteria which you could be eligible for bill. This is all spelled out in the intended use plan. So that's a great resource to go to determine if your project could be eligible in the future. But you have to be an eligible SRF project and meet one of the bill categories. You must qualify for hardship as defined by a hardship policy, because the money has to go to disadvantaged communities. Must not have closed an EFC financing or incurred debt by November 15th of 2021. Can't have started construction before that date as well. Must not have executed a long-term project financing agreement with EFC for your project, and must not be substantially complete before the beginning of the federal fiscal year. And of course, with all federal money, there are federal requirements. There's more information on our website regarding this, and we'll be in touch with municipalities that are currently eligible for bill. But a lot of the same state requirements apply, but then the federal requirements that kind of go above and beyond that are kind of shown on this slide. So the Professional AE Service Procurement, Build America, Buy America Act, which expands the American iron and steel requirement to include domestic preference procurement, telecom exclusion, disadvantaged business enterprise, single audit thresholds, additional coordination for environmental reviews, and like I mentioned, the SRF-based program conditions still apply to these projects. So I expect we'll be working very closely with municipalities to kind of help them navigate this because it's new to us as well. So thank you. I know this is kind of a lot, but we'll, like Jess had mentioned, we can take questions at the end of the group presentations, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie and Liz. And again, if people have questions, you can leave them in the chat and we will get to them at the end in case you think you might forget what your question is by the end of our presentations. So we're doing pretty good on time. Next up, we're going to be hearing from Howard Coons at the USDA Rural Development. Howard, there you are. I think I'll hand it over to you. And you should be able to screen share.
Thanks. And can someone let me know if you can see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. I'm Howard Coons from Rural Development. I'm one of Brenda Smith's program specialists and doing the presentation with her today. What is rural development? Rural development is one of 7 mission areas under the USDA. We have more than 40 loan, grant, and technical assistance programs to support economic development in rural areas. Our programs are delivered through 3 agencies. First is Rural Business Service. That's for business and energy programs. Next is Rural Utilities Service. That includes our water and environmental programs. And Rural Housing Service is single-family housing loans. And also under that is community facilities. I work with our water and environmental program under the Rural Utility Service and community facilities loans and grants under the Rural Housing Service. We have our catchphrase that rural development can build a community from the ground up with all our different programs. We have offices that cover every county in the state, and there's a color-coded map. You probably can't see the details of it, but that shows our offices and their service areas. First is water and environmental programs, or otherwise known as WEP. Under this program, we can finance projects for construction, repair, modification, expansion, or improvement of drinking water, sewer collection, solid waste, and stormwater collection. Funds can be used for construction costs, purchasing existing facilities, legal fees, engineering fees, land acquisition, permits, and equipment. Application preparation is not an eligible project expense or not an expense that we can finance. So if the applicant has an applicant preparation cost, they need to pay for that out of their own resources. An eligible applicant must be either a public body, not-for-profit corporation, or Native American tribe. The project has to be located in a rural area, and for this program, it's defined as population of 10,000 or less. It has to serve a rural area, The applicant must be unable to finance the project from their own resources or through commercial credit that would produce reasonable rates for the users. The applicant has to have the legal capacity to borrow and repay loans, and they need to own and operate the facility. Existing operations must be sustainable. They need to generate enough revenue to pay for expenses and their debt payment. Our loan repayment cannot exceed the useful life of facility or the legal term allowed, and we use 40 years for that. The applicant is responsible for doing or for obtaining their short-term financing during construction, and we offer easy terms designed for rural communities with limited resources. We term all our loans at 38 years. That gives the applicant 2 years for construction, and they typically finance that with a bond anticipation note during construction. After the ban portion, after the applicant has reached the amount of our loan with their ban, we can close on our loan. These are our current interest rates. Poverty rate is 2.125, intermediate 2.75, and market rate is 3.5. Those change quarterly. Loans must be adequately secured. In most cases, municipalities give us general obligation bonds for security. We need to take the best security available. In New York State, that's general obligation bonds. We have some grant funding available, and we use that to reduce user costs, to bring the user costs to a reasonable level. Our typical proportions are maybe around 70% loan and 30% grant. National office policy gives us a kind of a target cost per EDU of 1.5% of the median household income before we can add grant funding to the project. We don't have any grant caps in New York State. However, we can't give maximum grant amounts. That depends on our funding and other applications and availability. Communities should expect to pay between 1.5% and 2% of their median, of the community's median household income for debt service, O&M expenses, and short-lived assets. We are still using the 2010 5-year ACS, American Community Survey income amounts. We're planning on changing that October 1st, 2023. We have guaranteed loans available. With guaranteed loans, we can finance projects in communities up to a population of 50,000. The term is negotiated between the lender and the applicant, but still cannot exceed 40 years. Loan is made by a commercial lender, and we guarantee up to 90% of loss. This reduces the risk to the commercial lender and may make them be able to give a lower interest rate to the applicant. And there's a 1.5% guaranteed fee on that. We have another program called ECWAGs, Emergency Community Water Assistance Grants. This helps communities in 10,000 or less recover from an emergency that threatens the availability of safe, reliable drinking water. Eligible applicants is the same as for the direct program, which is a municipality, not-for-profit corporation, or a Native American tribe. And there's 2 types of ECWAG grants. One is for repairs, and that is up to 150,000, and one is for a new source, and that is up to $1 million. There's a streamlined application process for projects that only need an ECWAG. They don't need additional funding from us. For ECWAGs, there needs to be an event that caused the emergency. Some examples of events are droughts, floods, earthquakes, chemical spills. Federal disaster declaration is not required. And we have two types of planning grants. The applicant can use to pay for feasibility studies, doing preliminary engineering reports, and doing environmental reports. One is called a PPG, pre-development planning grant, and one is called a search grant, special evaluation assistance for rural communities. For PPG grants, the community needs to be 10,000 or less, and same eligibility as the other programs. The maximum grant amount is $30,000 or 75% of the total pre-development planning costs. And search grant is a little more specific. It's for communities of 2,500 or less, and same eligibility requirements. But with search grants, we can finance up to $30,000 or 100% of the pre-development planning cost. All our applications are on an online system called RD Apply, safe and secure, always available, faster processing, and less paper, or no paper. And that's just for our water and waste disposal programs. And we, in these presentations, we like to just touch on our community facilities program. With this, we can finance hospitals, health clinics, educational facilities, municipal buildings, highway garages, firehouses, vehicles, and different transportation facilities like roads and bridges. Same eligibility requirements as the WEP program. Applicant has to be a public body, not-for-profit, or Native American tribe. But instead of the WEP requirement of 10,000 population, this is for populations under 20,000. The project must serve a rural area. The population served can exceed 20,000, but the physical location of the facility must be located in a rural area defined as population under 20,000. And same terms with other credit. The applicant has to be unable to finance the project with their own resources or through reasonable commercial credit rates and terms. We can use funds for the purchase of real estate, buildings, purchase of existing facilities to improve or prevent loss of service, for construction, and for purchases of vehicles and other major equipment. We cannot finance recreational purposes, recreational facilities with this program. Can't finance commercial enterprises or electric generation or application preparation fees. We need to determine that the project is modest in cost, or cost, size, and design, and the facilities there's limited leasing availability for those facilities. Current interest rate is 3.5%. New construction is typically 30 years or whatever the local finance law determines as the term. Same thing with major equipment. The terms are based on local finance laws. This is our WEP program, water environmental programs. This is what our accomplishments were last year. We did 24 loans at about 74 million, 14 grants at about 20 million, 4 preliminary planning grants, 109,000, ECWAGs, and one REAP grant. We have a special pot of money called REAP, which is for towns, or which is for Tioga and Sullivan counties and the town of Warsing only. In community facilities, we did 17 loans at about 15 million, 15 grants at about 887,000, and 2 guaranteed loans at 22.5 million. There's my information and Brenda's information. And I have one other note to share. We are currently under a continuing resolution, and we have a portion of our funding available to us. So we are continuing application processing as we always have been. And that's my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Howard, for going through that with us.
No
And
problem.
again, folks, I see a couple questions. That's great. If you want to be getting your answers now, also, if you want to ask any questions and have us follow up with you by email afterwards, you can do that too. Just let us know. So next up, we're going to be hearing from Charlie Fillion. Charlie's at New York State Homes and Community Renewal at the Office of Community Renewal. So I'll turn it over to Charlie if you're able to share your screen. And if you could turn on your audio as well so we can hear you. And we are a little bit ahead of time, so it's possible Charlie has stepped out and he'll be back. Yeah, so
All right,
we
no,
have a couple.
Sorry, I'm
Oh.
here. I was having difficulty unmuting myself. Sorry about that.
Oh, there you go, Charlie. Great. All right, I will hand it over to you.
All right, so let me just get back to sharing my screen here, and let's get this show on the road so you can see the first screen.
Not at the moment.
Let me try it again. Hold on a second.
Yep.
Here we go.
There we go. I see looks like we
Yep.
see your,
Yep, there we go.
perfect.
All
Also,
right. Thanks, everybody. This is Charlie Fillion, Program Director with the Office of Community Renewal. We are based in Albany. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on our agency and get into some funding opportunities here with respect to CDBG. So New York State Homes and Community Renewal is a kind of a parent agency. It's an umbrella agency of all these Division of Housing Community Renewal, Housing Trust Fund Corporation, that's actually where I'm located, Housing Finance Agency in New York State, Sunny Mae, and AHC. So combined, we are New York State Homes and Community Renewal. It's the state's consolidated affordable housing agency made up of the Affordable Housing Corporation, again, these various agencies. And again, we are an office within the New York State Homes and Community Renewal. We administer a variety of state and federal resources for, to empower local governments and not-for-profit organizations to build on the unique and historic character of New York's communities through housing, infrastructure, and job creation. So it's kind of the linchpin of what we try to drive home right there, those three statements: housing, infrastructure, and job creation. We kind of consider those the three linchpins or three legs of community development. You need all three, and you need to do all three successfully to implement our projects and have success long-term for your community. Again, two general development areas. I am, again, located in the Office of Community Renewal, and we also have the Office of Finance and Development. They do primarily direct award and oversight of multifamily rental properties. And as I said, today we're going to talk specifically about New York State CDBG, the state program. So how do we operate? We use this method where CDBG specifically funds local units of government. We call them OGLUGs. It's city, town, village, counties. They're the only ones in New York that are eligible to apply. There are what we call entitlement jurisdictions. So upstate, you've got Erie County, Monroe County, Onondaga County. They are county entitlement jurisdictions. And there's a multitude of various cities across the state: Jamestown, Ithaca, Watertown, Utica, Rome. It's kind of scattered across the state. Albany, Schenectady, Detroit, right here in the Capital District, they're all entitlements. And then when you get into the New York metro area, most of those counties down there again are entitlements. So again, we work with what we call the non-entitlement jurisdictions. Again, we provide grants to municipalities, not-for-profits, and that's through some of the other programs, not through CDBG. They become the local administrators. They can grant or loan the funds to individual property owners or businesses. Again, with infrastructure, obviously the assistance is going directly to the municipality itself or to a district. The structure is different than other parts of the agency in terms of how we interact with the end user, but it does allow us to reach a high volume of users for the grant resources. But just quickly, this is the state and federal portfolio. So on the federal side, we have the CDBG and the home local programs and the other programs. I'm just introducing these, make sure people are aware that these are other sources available to you through the agency. We're not just CDBG. So a quick program summary. Again, we receive funding from HUD, and it's with the intent of ensuring communities throughout the state are viable, providing decent housing and suitable living environments. The CDBG funding has to go to assist low and moderate income persons, and we have to demonstrate at the end of our grants that at least 70% of our funding goes directly to the direct benefit of low and moderate income users, low and moderate income persons. There's a few different ways that you can meet national objective, and national objective is how you demonstrate the low income benefit, and that's the benefit to low and moderate income persons. Again, the aid in the elimination or slums or blight, and you can also meet an urgent community development need. So state and federal grants can fund a wide range of activities, and I'm going to get into a few of these. Again, public infrastructure, it's anything, the sewer end from, right from your sink drain, right to the wastewater treatment plant to, the discharge of clean water into a river stream. And then the flip side with the drinking water, it's everything right from the point source right to the tap. We can handle everything in between. Public facilities, these are generally brick and mortar type facilities, community centers, daycare centers, healthcare centers. We also do ADA compliance. It's Americans with Disabilities Act. Generally speaking, buildings for the general conduct of government, city hall, town hall, village hall, they are not eligible for CDBG assistance. However, if you are doing ADA compliance and you are doing removal of architectural barriers in a municipal building, that is eligible for CDBG assistance. If you are building a new facility that is not eligible for assistance because you have to be in compliance with building code, which requires that anyway. So this is strictly for removal of existing architectural barriers. Again, the economic development side of the program, manufacturing, small business assistance, and that's 25 or fewer employees. Micro enterprise assistance is 5 or fewer at the time of assistance. And we get into other things, manufactured housing replacement. We do private water, wastewater systems, so I can go directly into, for example, a manufactured housing park and do infrastructure. We can tie them to an existing district, or we can do a small package plant on site. And of course, community planning. This is kind of Liz talked about this a little while ago, but similar to their funding, and I think Howard with yours, this is the intent to assist communities in developing these engineering reports so that they've got a plan to move ahead and be successful with funding. So I talked about national objective, and that's what this talks about. So the national objective, the third column, is the orange column. It's how you show that you're meeting this low moderate income benefit standard. So LMA, these are activities that benefit an area, so village-wide, citywide, or a water district, sewer district, for example. They would meet the LMA by showing 51% of the residents are low income. You can also do that through smaller targeted areas. In some cases, the census data can be used to demonstrate that certain municipalities may be eligible for assistance. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail with the use of the census tract and block groups in a few minutes. So LMC, we don't see too much of that on the infrastructure side. It's what we call limited clientele. So senior center, for example, would qualify through LMC because it's limited benefit population. There's some of the other ones, the LMJ, that's for the jobs, obviously, and then LMCMC is for micro enterprise. And questions on this, just reach out to myself or Scott. Our contact information is going to be at the end of this, and or if you're working with program staff already, you can just reach out to them for further guidance on any one of these. So let's talk about activities and funding sources, again, with OCR. Again, this is what everyone wants to hear about today. This is the public water, sanitary sewer, stormwater management. Kind of falls, again, into the two primary buckets here, the sewer and water, and then we do some floodwater damage or floodwater mitigation. Public infrastructure may also include publicly owned utilities. Working with the Village of Bath right now down in Steuben County, they have a couple municipally owned systems. Eligible projects may include the repair or replacement of existing systems, construction of new systems in developed areas, or expansion of existing systems into areas previously unserved that are in compliance with New York State smart growth. Again, pay close attention to the smart growth form when you're applying. We look at that. It's not just asking you for the information, but we look at all the criteria. In particular, it's criteria 11, the new one they added regarding risk and resiliency. We just want to make sure that everything's in compliance. Things that may not be in compliance need to go on for further review. Doesn't mean we can't do it, but we do look at that, and it is a big part of our review process. I talked a minute ago here about the use of census tracts and block groups and using it to demonstrate eligibility. So if your city or village maybe is on our user base is 51% low income, which means 51% of the residents are low income, you think, all right, I'm all set, we're ready to go. That may not be the case. If this is a targeted area approach in the, you're replacing a distribution line on one street and it's only going to benefit the residents on that street, you're going to have to undertake an income survey. The other risk with using census tract data, and you want to talk to me about this before moving ahead with this, is if you're using a district. If your district may be within a census tract or block group that is 51% low and moderate income, but if the boundaries of the district do not perfectly line up, they're not perfectly coterminous with one another, you cannot use the data. We don't know if the low-income residents lie outside of the boundaries of your district. They may be contained completely within the census tract. I used to have a good graphic here that I probably will add back into this at some point. But again, just if your water sewer district is smaller than the census tract or block group that you're looking at, you're probably not going to be able to use that to demonstrate national objective compliance. Again, I talked a minute ago about private systems. We can do that within manufactured housing parks. It would require an agreement between the property owner and the municipality receiving the funds. Again, we can either do an on-site system, on-site well, on-site small package treatment plant, or tie them into an existing district. A few things to think about if you're considering applying for 2023. We use something similar to that RD does. We look at your user rates compared to median household income. The MHI is determined at the local level. It's not a statewide average. It's your local median household income, we can help you find that. We take 1.5% of your median household income and say that's an affordable rate. If your existing user rates are below that, you're going to lose some points. If your existing user rates are above that, it means that the system is already unaffordable. You're probably going to pick up a few more points. Leveraged funds, all the co-funding cohorts are on the call today. No one's mentioned it yet, but we do meet once a month. We have a co-funding call. We talk about projects. It's important to talk to us about funding. CDBG specifically, I have to be last into the project. So you have to show that you've exhausted all your other resources from EFC, from RD, from Department of State. You've exhausted everything. There's nothing else available. And you either can't receive funding, or you've got a gap in financing, or you can demonstrate that the use of CDBG funds, because these are grant, there's no repayment with these, you can show that the CDBG funds can make the project more affordable. I say that because as a percentage of your project cost, your dollars that you bring in for the leveraged funds, the higher the volume that you bring in as a percentage of your project cost, the more points you're going to get. If you're bringing in 50, 60, 70% of your project costs are coming from leveraged funds, you're going to get significantly more points than somebody that's bringing in just 10% of the project cost with either local funds or leveraged funds. The other big change that we incorporated, and this was in effect for the 2022 run that is now closed, but your environmental review has to be completed. So your NEPA, your seeker, everything, consultations, mitigation, everything literally has to be ready to go at the time of application. For projects that are awarded, moving ahead, you're going to have 60 days from award to submit your request for a release of funds to us. And then you're going to have 6 months from award to hit substantial progress, which means you're under contract and under construction. Just important things, talk to us if you're thinking about it. Savi Kola and Ben Madison are my infrastructure folks in office. So talk to me, talk to Ben, talk to Savi, and we'll get the ball rolling if you're looking at 2023. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to jump through these next slides here pretty quickly for time. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. Chris is usually on the side here with a hook trying to pull me off.
You got about 10 minutes, Charlie.
Okay, good. I got about 7 more slides to get through. So again, public facility, that's the other big area that we look at. For 2023, the funding limit has officially gone up to $1 million. It's currently at $300,000 through 2022, but it is going up. It's a big jump. Again, these can be projects that involve acquisition, construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, installation. Again, buildings for the general contractor government. I talked about this with ADA compliance. Town halls, village halls are eligible if you're doing ADA compliance. There's kind of the general, where we kind of, the catch-alls like community centers, healthcare centers, daycare centers, but pretty much CDBG can be pretty flexible. So if you think that you have something that might fit under the facility program, again, just pick up the phone and call us. We can do other things. We're trying to encourage street lighting, upgrading, putting the new, I can't think of the HD lamps, tree planting, again, for environmental purposes, for conservation, can also be an eligible activity. For the bricks and mortar type buildings, the healthcare centers, daycare centers, community centers, anyone that goes through that, there is going to be a 5-year restrictive lien that is in place following the completion of the project. And it's going to require that the buildings stay in that use for at least a 5-year period following completion. If it changes and the use changes and it's no longer used as an eligible activity, or you cannot demonstrate that the users are low income, you're going to be subject to recapture of funds. And economic development, Scott Lamount is the point person on this. He's the program director on the ED side. We do a lot of, not a lot, but we do infrastructure in support of economic development. So you've got a manufacturer that needs water, sewer, gas, electric, et cetera. We can bring that in. And also the small business assistance, we talked about that a little bit. The traditional economic development and the small business assistance both allow construction. The micro enterprise assistance does not allow for construction. That is typically like furniture, fixture, equipment, inventory, working capital. It's generally what's eligible under the micro enterprise program. And then we have community planning. Again, this is a great tool. It's this was gone from our program for a number of years, and we brought it back a while ago. It is up to $50,000. The other sources that you've heard, if they allow, will allow you to use their funding for a match. Even with leveraged dollars on the planning side, we still require at least a 5% cash match from the municipality. You got to have some skin in the game. So you may end up with a $100,000 proposal, $50,000 from CDBG, $50,000 from the EBG or one of the other programs. That's fine. But if you're asking for $50,000, we're still going to look to see that you've got at least 2,500 or 5%. Has to be a cash match. In-kind services donated are not eligible. Funds have to be available and committed. Just quickly, some additional information. That's our website. Go to it. We try to maintain that, update that on a regular basis. There's all kinds of links. The screenshot here on the left side of the screen, if you go to the website, there's the whole list of links there for our grant administration manual, funding round opportunities, all the various forms that we use. And some of these, the webinars that we do will also be posted there. Just, I'm going to put a plug in for myself for if I can, and I'm not sure who else is going to be there next week, but Genesee Finger Lakes Regional Planning Council is doing, I'm doing an extended version of this next Thursday out in Waterloo at the casino. So again, just, I did a quick run through on this today, but this, I'll have an hour of material for that next week. If anybody on the call today will be there, to be great to meet you. I'll have a booth there and we'll be there for the day. So if you're going to be there, look me up. And as I said, there's our contact information. You can always, if it's like a generic question, you can always send it to OCR info. Otherwise, there's my email. I will handle the public facility, public infrastructure, housing side of the program. Scott handles the economic development and the community planning side of the program. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And thanks for having me today. It's been great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Charlie. That's great. And then if you want to, if you can find the link for the event in Waterloo and want to share it in the chat, feel free. Otherwise, we could probably dig it up as well for any of the folks who are in that area and might want to check out the extended discussion. So we're still good in time. Everybody's doing great. Thank you. Next up, we're going to be hearing from Lila Mitchell at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And I think Lila's in the same office as some of our other presenters. Oh, there we go. So Lila, over to you if you are unmuted.
Good. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, this is Lila Mitchell at the DEC, and thank you so much. I know it's a long afternoon, a couple of hours. We're throwing a lot of information at you. Yes, I'm here in my neighbors at the EFC with Liz and Annie, and all of us presenters from the co-funding. We're just so happy that you're here because we want everybody to understand our funding programs so that everybody can, join us and try to get funding for your projects. So I'm going to talk with you about two funding programs. First, the Water Quality Improvement Project Program, also known as WQIP. And second, the Non-Agriculture, Non-Point Source Planning and MS4 Mapping Grant, which we call MPG. Both of these programs are released annually as part of the consolidated funding application. The information in our request for applications is often changed from one year to the next. So I will provide an overview of the programs based on the 2022 round. Once the RFA is released next spring, you will need to read it to see any changes made to the criteria or eligible project types. So first we'll talk about the WQIP. This is a statewide competitive reimbursement grant program for projects that will directly improve water quality or aquatic habitat or protect a drinking water source. The amount of funding available for each round is based on the New York State budget. The Clean Water Infrastructure Act of 2017 is providing a substantial amount of funding for the WQIP program. The program also depends on allocations in the state's Environmental Protection Fund. The maximum grant awards for a project differ by the project type. And the last bullet on the slide is very important to understand. The required match for each project type is based on the award amount, which is usually the requested amount. It is not based on total project costs, as some of the other grant programs are based on total project costs. WQIP has 4 types of eligible applicants: municipalities, municipal corporations, soil and water conservation districts, and not-for-profits. Note that the not-for-profits are only eligible to apply for the source water protection, aquatic connectivity restoration, and marine district habitat restoration projects. There were 6 types or categories of projects last year in WQIP that I am going to go over in the next few slides. For the 2022 round, the primary priority under the wastewater treatment improvement project type was the installation of disinfection equipment at facilities that do not yet have disinfection. The secondary priorities were projects that reduce CSO/SSO discharges, were required in a DEC-approved watershed plan, such as a TMDL, installed sewers to serve properties with documented failing septic systems, or would reduce nitrogen in shellfishing waters. If a project did not address any of these 5 priority concerns, it would be eligible as a general wastewater treatment improvement project. If a project was scored as a general project, the match was 60% of the awarded amount. The next project category is non-agricultural, non-point source abatement and control. The projects eligible for funding are non-point source, are New York State approved non-point source best management practices. In the last round, we identified this list of management practices that DEC would fund under this grant. If you are interested in applying for a non-point source project, you can review details about the management practice you are interested in applying for in the 2022 program overview, which is still on DEC's website. The source water protection category focuses on land acquisition, either through outright land purchase or easements to protect public drinking water sources. Municipalities, soil and water conservation districts, and not-for-profits, such as land trusts, are eligible to apply for the funding. If one of your community's goals is to provide more protection for your drinking water supply, I encourage you to check this one out. The highest priority for the salt storage category has been for projects to construct a new structure to cover an exposed salt or salt sands mixture storage pile. Replacement structures have also been eligible. Although they receive lower scores, some have been funded. The goal of the aquatic connectivity restoration project type is to restore the natural movement of aquatic life where it has been blocked by culverts, bridges, or dams. Note that if your project is to repair or replace a culvert and the main concern is stream erosion, not aquatic connectivity, you should apply under the non-point source category. This WQIP project type is specifically for projects that will improve the habitat for fish and wildlife in the marine district waters of New York State. A map showing the marine district waters can be found on DEC's website. So next, I'll talk about the non-agricultural, non-point source planning and MS4 mapping grant, or MPG. There are two types of projects eligible for this grant. The first is for developing planning reports for non-point source water quality improvement projects. The second type of project is mapping regulated municipal separate storm sewer systems. Last year, $3 million was made available through the state's Environmental Protection Fund. The local match was 10%. I will discuss each of the project types separately. The eligible applicants for the non-point source planning reports are municipalities and soil and water conservation districts. In 2022, the maximum award amount per application was $30,000 for planning reports, or up to $75,000 for comprehensive stream corridor studies. The goal of providing funding for non-point source planning reports is to prepare these projects for construction and for the planning reports to be used to seek funding through the WQIP program or other funding sources. The types of reports that can be produced with this grant are required or suggested for WQIP non-point source projects. All the reports and findings funded by this grant must be submitted to DEC and found acceptable by DEC. Applicants have a maximum term of 2 years to complete their reports. The second project type in this grant is the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Mapping. We shorten Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System to the acronym MS4. The eligible applicants for the MS4 mapping projects are regulated municipal MS4 operators and soil and water conservation districts on behalf of regulated MS4 operators. The goal is to provide MS4 municipalities with funding to conduct comprehensive mapping of their stormwater system. If the applicant represents a municipal collaborative, the maximum funding amount in 2022 was $30,000 per municipality with up to $400,000 per collaborative. If applying alone, the maximum award amount was $75,000. Awardees of this grant must be expected to produce a final map product along with a summary report. DEC encourages applicants to cooperate with other regulated municipal MS4 operators when possible. Mapping must meet the current MS4 permit requirements, and awardees must create, use, or expand on electronic GIS mapping. The elements of a basic, intermediate, and advanced map are outlined in the 2022 NPG program overview that's on DEC's website. Identified basic mapping elements must be done before the intermediate and advanced mapping elements can be added with this funding. For both the WQIP and MPG grants, DEC is demonstrating its commitment to environmental justice by awarding points if the project will improve water quality in an environmental justice area or positively impact drinking water serving an environmental justice community. So this is, I just gave a very high overview of our WQIP and MPG grants. The details, again, you'll be able to see them on the website. But But before concluding the presentation on this, I want to leave you with a few tips for applying for WQIP or MPG funding. First and foremost, start early. If you miss the application deadline, no one can help you. Every year we hear about applicants desperately trying to upload documents into the CFA last minute. Avoid that stress and start early. Skim the entire RFA and then focus especially on the specifics for your project type. You should also read the back of the program overview because it contains the requirements should you receive an award. Double check that you have attached everything required. We cannot contact you if you do not attach something or the attachment is missing required information. Your application will be deemed ineligible, and this does happen. Make the water quality connections in your application. Reviewers can only base their evaluations on the information in the application. Self-score your project to see how competitive your project might be, but remember that your chances of getting an award through either of these grant programs is also dependent upon how many applications we receive for each project type. And finally, fill out the budget form and upload it with the application. The budget form for both WQIP and MPG should only include the eligible costs to be reimbursed by the grant. So thank you for your time learning about WQIP and MPG. You can go to DEC's website to get more details about the 2022 WQIP and MPG programs. And then we'll post new information as soon as the next CFA is announced next year. If you have questions after reading the information on the website, you can reach out to us at this email the email address, user.water@dec.ny.gov. So that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Lila. And again, folks, if you have any questions, we have one more speaker, and then we'll be opening up the Q&A. So you have time still to ask your questions, and looks like we'll have time to get through them. So next up, we're going to be hearing from Kyle Wilbur. Kyle's at the New York State Department of State, and looks like he's got his screen set. So I will turn it over to you, Kyle.
Thanks, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Wilbur, and as Patrick said, I am with the New York State Department of State. And I manage a few, sorry, I am going a little fast. I manage multiple programs at the Department of State's Division of Local Government Services that can assist local governments in planning for and implementing infrastructure projects. We're not EFC, we're not DEC, we're not Department of Health, we're not the huge big time players in this arena, but all the programs that I manage can have and often do have an infrastructure component. We're going to talk about our local government efficiency and shared services programs, and then our federally funded community development programs that cover basically 42 of New York's 62 counties across the state. So local government efficiency and shared services. This program has been in existence since 2005, has gone through multiple iterations, and now lives as our local government efficiency program, all with the goal of working with our over 1,500 plus general purpose local governments, thousands of other special purpose units of government to help them identify and implement ways to share services and also up to consolidating services. Goals are many. Hopefully, in many instances, they reduce costs, but we want to make sure that at the end of the day, we're improving service delivery across local government boundaries, whether it's consolidation or shared services, and focusing, even though we have a lot of other funding coming across the deck, funding is still limited, and we believe that sharing services can help mitigate that. So we have our first grant is our local government efficiency grant, LGAG for short. This is our loan program that sits within the CFA. No longer are we part of the REDC review process, but the LGEG application is within the CFA, was this year, has been for all but the first year of the CFA. We have $4 million available for funding this past year. We anticipate that as well next year. 3.6 of that is available for implementation, 400,000 for planning projects. Our planning projects, both of our application types are capped in total funding. Our planning projects are capped at $100,000 for a project. That includes $12,500 per municipality, and the planning funds are 1-to-1 match. So for every dollar the state invests, there must be a dollar of local funds. Our implementation projects are capped at $200,000 per municipality per project, with a $1 million full cap on the project. Those are 90-10 state to local fund match. Eligible governments, really, I often, probably always say that almost any organization, any government or public body that's helping local governments or providing local government services are generally available. All the general purpose governments, school districts, BOCES. We also have special districts that are eligible. So across the board, town water, town sewer districts are eligible, or towns are eligible to apply on behalf of their special districts for these funds. And the next program that I'm getting into, we've seen a growth in towns applying for water and sewer consolidation type projects for their districts. Eligible expenses are really, I think, similar to most programs: contractual, professional services, equipment. We do enable through this grant. It's in our legislation that will pay for a limited period of transitional personnel. And we believe the reason for that is, if a local government is taking over or now providing a service on behalf of another local government, it's something that they didn't do in the past. There might be growth in personnel that need to be covered, and we can cover that for a period of up to 3 years. So, if a county is now providing services on behalf of their local governments, we can pay for personnel for a short period of time for that purpose. Our Citizens Reorganization and Empowerment Grant, or CREG for short. This is the program I was talking about, a small growth in water and sewer district applications. Our CREG program, the intent of the CREG program is to implement General Municipal Law 17A, which is the consolidation of local government statute in New York. For about the past 10 years now, this has been where local governments go to consolidate. Before that, the consolidation language lived within town law, village law. Now it's all under one consolidated statute. And again, this is for local government consolidation, dissolution, special district consolidation, dissolution. This is a non-CFA program. We have a rolling monthly deadline. You need to submit to us a simple PDF application by the first Wednesday of the month at 4 o'clock. An email is sufficient to our local government mailbox. These applications are capped at $100,000 per project, 50 max for study, 50 for implementation. Again, with this program, you have to be a local government that is permitted to do consolidation pursuant to that statute, General Municipal Law 17A again. And the reason why it's not competitive is because there's a limited eligibility under that statute. So if you're doing something pursuant to that, you can apply to us for planning and implementation activities. Again, similar eligible expenses, contractual capital, construction, transitional personnel. I want to bring up briefly the countywide shared services initiative. This is not a grant, but in 2018, a program was launched, the countywide shared services initiative, which had asked the chief elected county official to bring together all their local governments within the county to develop a shared services plan. If they did that and implemented projects that were listed in that plan, they would become eligible to receive funding back from the state equal to, it was basically matching the savings that accrued from that shared services project. So I bring this up only to make folks aware of this, that if you're doing a shared infrastructure project, it would behoove you to work with your county to get that in the countywide shared services plan for an eligible implementation year, because you would likely be eligible for a one-time match of the net savings resulting from those actions. And what we mean by net savings is any funding that you get via a grant from the state will be taken out of your savings. So, but it's if you're doing the project anyway, it is a very good way to get funding back as general purpose aid, matching your savings from those projects. That is our local government side. I wanted to talk briefly, well, not briefly, but a little bit about our two regional programs. The Department of State serves as the program management office for the Appalachian Regional Commission and the Northern Border Regional Commission. Both of these are federally funded state and local partnerships. So funding becomes available to the states in these commissions to help develop a variety of community development projects, of which infrastructure is one of those eligible activities. We'd help develop projects along with our regional planning partners, local development districts. Some of those include in the Southern Tier 8 in Binghamton, Southern Tier Central in Corning, Southern Tier West in Salamanca. Charlie mentioned Chancey Finger Lakes. They're a partner in the Northern Border region, Western Northern Border region, around Rochester, Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board, Central New York Regional Planning Board, Mohawk Valley Economic Development District, and a few others, CDRPC in the Capital Region, Hudson Valley Regional Council. So we work with them to develop projects. We review them and score them, recommend them to the commissions. The contracting for these become the responsibility of the commission staff. Northern Border Region, you'll see here, includes 28 New York counties. You may wonder who created this Northern Border map. Not me. It's a federal program, so there are federal folks that we all know that often get interested in these programs. So in 2018, Sullivan County, Greene County, Rensselaer, a lot of the western ones were added to this commission. Again, it's a 4-state partnership program, includes Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. On this map, you'll see the darker green counties, if you're doing a project, require an 80-20 match. The lighter green counties require a 50-50 match. Saratoga and Schenectady are deemed attainment counties by the commission's economic data. We can do planning and implementation for these as well. This is the map of the whole region. And I just listed, these funding numbers show really how this program, Northern Border, has grown, as well as the Appalachian program. MBR competitive program for us. We received about 60 applications this past year. I think we were able to fund 10 or 11. The commission has a $4 million forest economy program, which we're relaunching soon. That's region-wide. $5 million for broadband. Each state has been allocated $1.25 million for broadband development. We've worked closely with our regional planning boards to help deploy that. Then there's funding for community capacity. We also have
Kyle, I think you cut out for a second.
rules for how,
Oh,
Yep.
Okay, I hear you again. Sorry, we lost you for a couple seconds.
okay. Again, this is just our program overview region-wide, and the IIJA money will be released by the commission fairly soon as we finalize the program rules across the 4 states. The commission enables funding in 7 areas. Infrastructure is the priority, transportation, water and sewer.
Yeah,
Recreation type projects for economic development. So again, a wide swath of eligible activities, but yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so I think maybe if you wanted to turn off your video, it looks like your video is frozen.
Oh,
But
you're right.
It
You
could
know
just
what?
be-
I am.
I have better connection when I'm at home sometimes. It's crazy.
There we go. No, now we can hear you. That's good.
And this is, don't buy Awuzi cameras. I've found that they're awful.
We
But
can put that into the advice at the end.
but
Thanks.
I freeze every time I'm on these things. I should have said that before I started. So just finishing up, I'm almost done. MBRC has 7 key priorities, infrastructure, 7 funding objectives. Infrastructure is the priority, and 40% of all funding must go to infrastructure, whether it's transportation, water and sewer, broadband, telecommunications, renewable energy. Couple more slides. The commission has $1 million funding cap per infrastructure project, 350,000 for all their projects. A key piece to both of these commissions. You can use federal funding to match their grants, which is unique. However, that is capped at 80% of all funding for project total. So no more than 80% federal funding within a project. Appalachian program. This is a picture of, I think, the Mark Twain gazebo and Elmira maybe, but again, a lot of money, a lot of funding through the Appalachian program. Last year, the commission, this is a 13-state commission that goes from New York Southern Tier to Mississippi, 195 million across the whole commission. New York had 3 million for our annual area development program. There's a power program, which is working with communities mostly outside New York to help transition away from coal. Our Inspire program is funding to help folks that have SUD, substance abuse issues, and helping them get back into the economic, into our economy. The IIJA investments to ARC were 1 billion over 5 years. This includes funding for it. We've got a boost in our annual program. ARC just released 2 months ago the Arise program, which is focused on funding multi-state partnership initiatives. So the federal co-chair who manages the ARC wants the states to try to do multi-state projects, whether it's workforce, tourism, those types of things. They will not be easy, but an interesting charge to say the least. And then more capacity funding. ARC has 5 key goal areas: building businesses, building workforce, ecosystems, infrastructure, culture, tourism, and community capacity. With this program, we work directly again through Southern Tier 8 in Binghamton, Southern Tier Central Regional Planning Board in Corning, and Southern Tier West Regional Planning Board in Salamanca to help us. They really generate the projects, send them to us for our review to make sure they're consistent with state priorities. This is me. I was going to share some infrastructure projects, but if you have questions, I'd be happy to go over offline to tell you, some of the examples that we've used our funding for infrastructure. So thank you, and I look forward to the question.
Great. Thank you so much, Kyle. I have one last slide. So thank you so much to our presenters for providing your expertise for this presentation. Directly after this webinar, an evaluation survey will become available. We ask that you let us know your thoughts on today's session, as this helps us plan future webinars on topics important to you and what you need to know. In addition, you will be receiving a follow-up email after this webinar that will include the link to the evaluation survey, links to resources related to today's discussion. And we do have 2 questions to go over today. Let me just open chat box. Great. So Liz, I think these pertain to your presentation. We have Robert asking, do the AE procurement requirements provide an exemption for municipalities with populations under 10,000?
Yeah, so I think the 10,000 is referring to the EPA has a definition for small communities, anything under 10,000. So in terms of the federal requirements, that would apply to like the environmental review or BABA projects could be exempt under populations under, if you have a population under 10,000. But in terms of the AE procurement, that exemption would not apply. So AE procurement is required for all projects seeking bill funding because it is a federal requirement. And again, just to reemphasize, even for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program, anybody using base SRF funds, going forward, any agreement signed after October 1st, 2022 would also have to comply with AE procurement. And we have guidance on our website of what that means to communities. And, you know, if you have any questions, we have staff that can help with that because it is new and we're navigating it at the same time.
Great, thanks, Liz. I think this one is directed for you too. How can a municipality find out if they meet the hardship criteria for BIL?
Sure. So the first step, your project would have to be listed on the intended use plan. We also have, if you're not listed, but you're just curious whether you would comply with, or you would be eligible for hardship, I would recommend you take a look at our hardship policy that's on our website, and it goes through the gating criteria, but you're going to focus on what your median household income is for your municipality. And there are some, you know, some avenues if you want to do an income survey or use other pieces of information to, you know, justify that your project MHI is, say, lower than your municipality's MHI. But there's a couple other criteria in there as well. So that's the best resource. But if your project is already listed on the intended use plan, I would recommend you take a look at our published 2023 IEP, either the clean water or drinking water one, and you should be identified as a hardship eligible community if we've already evaluated you. But either way, if you have questions, you can reach out to our office and we'd be happy to help you, you know, take a look at some of those metrics if you're not currently on the intended use plan.
Great, thanks, Liz. And one more for you here. Will bill funding for emerging contaminants 100% subsidies only apply to hardship communities?
I believe the answer is yes, but I'm going to look to Annie to see if that, I'm pretty sure all the bill money is.
Your bill money is only for
Disadvantaged.
yeah, for DAC for disadvantaged communities.
Okay, yep, that is correct.
All right, great, thanks. And now we have a question from Michelle Wright from the town of Ulysses to everyone. This is a question across funding programs. How often are funding maximums assessed to address inflation? Is there any expectation that funding maximums will increase in the future? It's a great question.
Well, this is Liz again. I'll just speak for the WIA grant programs or various grant programs. You know, every year we evaluate our grant criteria to decide whether we want to increase our program maximums, because, you know, we do recognize that project costs are increasing. You know, we don't offer opportunities, unfortunately, if you're awarded a grant, we don't increase those awards, but we always, you know, we let people reapply if they want to retract their current grant. I don't know if we're going to increase our maximums next year, but, you know, it's something that we will discuss. But for the clean water program, our 25% maximum, or excuse me, our $25 million maximum for the program, that's pretty a large cap. I wouldn't expect the clean water cap to increase, but, you know, we'll take a look at that annually just to see if there's opportunity that we would want to increase those.
Hi, this is Lila Mitchell from the DEC. I will also answer it from our perspective. We do look at those things every year. We look at our maximum award amount. This past year, I didn't go into what the maximum was, but for wastewater treatment, it was $10 million this past year. That's a good chunk of change toward any wastewater improvement project. I don't know if that will stay the same, but it has been 10 million for the past 2 years for most projects except disinfection. We do look at it every year. We also weigh it against sometimes the higher the maximum amount for one project is, that decreases the number of projects that we can award to. So we have to balance that out. Looking at the higher cost, but then we may not be able to fund as many projects. So that's some of the analysis that we do at DEC.
Great, thank you. Would any of our other presenters like to jump in?
Hey, it's Kyle. Our caps for the local government program are in legislation, so I'm not sure how that would be a little difficult to change. The regional programs, we talk about it every year. MVRC has gone up to $1 million just a year or two ago for infrastructure, and discussions have been to increase that more, but nothing yet.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Charlie. We look at that every year, but again, there's no, we're not increasing anything. We've done incremental increases over time. And again, the public facility one was a big jump for us from 300,000 to $1 million. It wasn't based on inflation or anything, but we do take those things into consideration, and it's really part of your need. So occasionally we might be able to provide some additional funding to somebody post-award, but that's under extreme mitigating circumstances. It's on a case-by-case basis.
All right, thanks.
Hi, yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. For rural development, we don't have grant caps, so there's not a maximum set amount for grant caps for us. The problem that we run into is obviously we don't receive about $11 million in grant money, so we're restricted more on the basis of availability, because we do have so many projects that we try to fund. So like I said, there's no grant cap for us, but we do look at obviously trying to fund as many projects as we can, and with the limited amount of resources that we do get.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Brenda. We have another question here. How is the blended score calculated on the IUP?
I'll take this one. This is Liz. I think this is specific to the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. So anybody that's on our category sub D1 list, to determine if you are eligible for bill, it uses a blended affordability score. I'm not very knowledgeable specifically how that's calculated, but I believe it's explained in our hardship policy. But if you have, if you take a look at that and you still want some more information, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I can put you in touch with the folks that generated those lists and those scores. I know that it's based on a couple factors in addition to the MHI and probably poverty rate and a few other things. I know EPA had required a couple factors to be considered, and that those were used to determine that score. So I would definitely recommend looking at the hardship policy.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Please type them into the chat. I think we've addressed all the questions that have come through so far.
Hey, Jess, I got a couple questions about the recording and if it will be made available. So I just wanted to chime in and say that we will be emailing it to all of you within a couple days of the session, and it will also be on our website at the link in the chat. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Avery. And just a reminder that an evaluation will be coming through at the end of this webinar. So please give us some feedback. If we're always looking for new approaches to this topic. So if you find that a different format or a different setup would be more helpful to your town's needs, just please let us know. And unless any of our presenters have a last word they would like to contribute, I think we can give everyone some time back today.
Jess, just one final comment. I'm going to take liberties here and speak on behalf of all my co-funders, but you got to talk to us. It is so vital to talk to us when you're putting your plan of finance together, especially because CDBG is grant dollars. We have to see how that's going to impact your other funding that you've got lined up. We just want to make sure it's not going to just simply offset other grant funding. So just talk to us. I'll do the legwork. If you're looking at something that's co-funded, I'll do the legwork to get everybody together at the table at one time.
Great, thanks, Charlie. And as I mentioned, all of the contact information for our speakers today is available on the SUEFC website. And as I've heard them say in previous funding roundtables, just please pick up the phone, ask them a question. They're very approachable and it would really help you with the process. Avery just posted the link to that information in the chat box. All right, I think we're good. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you again to all of our speakers for sharing their expertise. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.